Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video we will be talking about the pattern overall, several storm chances, each of them not looking too significant, but definitely they could drop over 6 to 7 inches in some locations, and there will be many of them, potentially 3 to 5 chances within a week. So a lot of stuff to discuss, a very wintry pattern to say the least. It's very cold. And you can see that it's indicated by these wind chill watches and warnings we have in Canada and the US, and obviously snow. Alright, so if you guys, before we get into this, if you guys would like to support this channel, if you like these videos, you could do so by subscribing and hitting the thumbs up button. Gets this video out to more people. And in case you already are subscribed, hitting the bell notification icon also lets you know every time I upload a video, so that's also something you can do. Alright, let's get into this. Okay, so I want to start off by looking at the radar and the map of the United States in terms of watches and warnings. We have the display kind of overlying each other's with the radar and the warnings. So notice in terms of warnings, I mean, just obviously this pops up right here across Canada. Almost the whole province of Saskatchewan, most of Alberta, and Manitoba as well are covered in Ontario, and really other provinces as well in these extreme cold warnings. I mean, very, very cold air, right? Obviously, you've been hearing a lot about it. Negative 40 to 50 wind chills, and that's in Celsius across Canada. Across the U.S., a bit of a different title, but pretty much the same thing. Very, very cold air. Notice that that's 50 below in terms of Fahrenheit, so relatively the same. Very, very cold. We do have that blizzard pulling away across into Canada. We do have some warnings. Right there, you can see 30 to 50 centimeters of snow. In terms of inches, that's roughly around 12 to 24 inch range of snow. Notice that as we push this forward, what we see is a lot of obviously movement on the map, and this is from 11 o'clock in the morning. So notice the Midwest had seen some light snow, right? But look at this system. We moved through New York, right, with the DC area, Virginia, into Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, to Cape Cod. Look at that. I mean, it just went right up the coast, kind of as forecasted, right? There were some locations, actually, quite a few locations that got decent amounts of snow. While there were a few that underperformed as well, and notice now it's starting to pull away and slam it right into Canada, into look at that, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. Look at that. I mean, just a huge area of snow is on their way. You obviously even heavier amounts for those locations. Lake effect is back at it again across Superior, Huron. It actually never stopped. It did stop a bit across Erie and Ontario. It is ongoing a bit across Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, not that much. Lake Michigan also seeing some very light lake effect. And we do have a system across the Midwest, which is, again, our area of interest. Notice, you can just see where this chain is occurring. Look at that, all the way from the mountains through Idaho, Wyoming, right, Oregon, Wyoming into Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, even Ohio. Notice that this thing is just very disorganized, and that's what makes it hard to predict. Anywhere, this little snowband sets up, it's going to be, it's going to drop quite a bit of snow with relative low amounts of forcing with lift. These things could squeeze out in terms of liquid a few hundredths of an inch, but that could lead to an inch or two of snow because of how cold the air is, right? And obviously the air is very, very cold. Notice we do have some showers moving into the Seattle area, into Washington. Okay, let's take a look at the snowfall totals with this event. Lake effect event across Michigan has been rather significant. Let's extend the range a bit out and notice that we did have some 15-inch amounts right there, Sparta, Michigan. Right there, also decent amounts off Lake Superior, probably the highest amounts right there across Wawa into probably Sault Ste. Marie as well. On the Canadian side, Lake Erie, Buffalo, I got around 7 inches, 8 inches, and then further out towards Batavia and into Pembroke around 13, 14 inches. Off of Lake Ontario, similar amounts, and again, it's still snowing. Look at this right here, right? This system overproduced for sure across the south. I mean, into Georgia, it definitely overproduced. It reached into the 3 and 4 inch range, not expected, and even into, look at that right there, Adairsville, Georgia, a tenth of an inch. Central Tennessee did not get I mean, they did get some, but as they got towards the east, they also did get quite a bit of snow. And into extreme southeastern Kentucky, you can see up to 9 inches was reported. Knoxville around 1 to 2 inches, varied quite a bit. Into Virginia, generally 4 to 6 inches. By the central Virginia area, more like a 2 to 3 inch event. And notice into DC and Maryland, they did get missed out a bit. On the outskirts, it was 2 to 3, and to the north, there were the heavier amounts. But right in the center of DC, I think it was just maybe 1 to 2 inches, so not the best. Notice Delaware, Dover, right, 3, 4 inches, not bad event. Notice as we push into, say, New York, Philadelphia, they did get some snow. While it was a bit to the north of Philadelphia, there was a lot of variations with this. Notice, I mean, right there, 4.5 as of 11:30, and this was as of 10:40 and 1 inch. So, I mean, regardless, wherever you live across Philadelphia, you did get some snow. They did vary quite drastically as you got just a bit to the north and west. You got many locations, widespread 6 inches plus. Trenton, I'm assuming 3 to 5 inch range was fair to say. New York, 4 to 8. There were some 8 inch amounts, though rather, not as common as say 6 inches. And notice Central Park got around 4 inches again, and maybe a bit of an underestimate because that was a bit of an older report from 3 o'clock. It is now there 6 o'clock. Notice 9 right there across Westwood, New Jersey. Long Island also got widespread 5 to 7 inches. So generally did a pretty good job. The storm as forecasted. Connecticut did see some snow, and here's where amounts start kind of going uphill. You can see Massachusetts, some areas right there. Again, I was saying that yesterday this was going to be Massachusetts heavy area into Boston, Rhode Island. A lot of areas into the 10, 11 inch range, and you can see 3, 4 inches across Boston. Again, this is probably still going to add up quite a bit more. If you were to look at the radar, this system, it's still plowing along into Boston, Connecticut, extreme eastern Connecticut, I should say, and to Rhode Island, obviously not pushing into Canada. So a few inches is still possible. Let's move on and start talking about the storm chances, okay? So we have the European pulled up, and this is going to be hard to go over because there's just so many little events that could happen in this small amount of time, and they're not going to be, huge, either of them really. But that's kind of what makes it hard. And there are some models that are showing a more significant event out of especially the one on Thursday and Wednesday. So we'll just have to keep an eye on this. Overperforming with these systems won't be hard as they have very, very little moisture to work with, but the snowfall ratios are very high. So even if more moisture does get worked in, that could increase the snowfall amounts by quite a bit of snow. So notice, let's start talking about this. So we have right now Monday pulled up, right? This system's pulling away. This is really around 6 p.m. Sunday, I should say. 6 hours ahead of what actually is. This is 00Z usually. Notice that right now across Illinois, for example, Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, and this will continue to go on. The European definitely does underplay a lot of this thing, which makes it even further to kind of predict. Notice a very, very large system across southeastern Canada. Look at that. We do see a bit of snow tonight into tomorrow. This is tomorrow at 12 p.m. We do see another redeveloping wave and another one coming in off the west. And while this looks measly, you can see it spreads snow into, for example, Illinois, right? Indiana, Michigan, Kentucky, Kentucky, bits of Kentucky, Missouri, and into eastern portions of Iowa. Notice that this continues spreading and kind of stagnating for a bit there, but it moves and spreads into the northeast, right? Tuesday, look at that. This looks very measly, but it does start getting some support from the ocean, especially as it reaches towards Connecticut, Massachusetts, right? A rain snow line kind of splitting New Jersey, so Philadelphia maybe getting some late rain out of that. But right there, that would be enough to produce several inches of snow, potentially even up to 6 inches because of the cold air and the decent amount of forcing with that. So if you're just to take a look at that, actually I won't because I will, but this is not going to be accurate because it's a 10-to-1 ratio. Regardless, this is what it shows with the system remaining for today. This was issued as of 12 p.m. So this is 5 hours old as I'm recording this, or 6 hours old, or sorry, yeah, 5 hours old as I'm recording this video. And notice that, for example, Massachusetts or Boston ends up at 4 inches, right? And if we add on this next system, it could end up at around 7 to 6. So an easily 2 to 4 inches could be added on with that event. All right, and again, this is assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, which it will most definitely be higher. I almost forgot myself that was a 10-to-1 ratio. So 2 to 3 inches could be added on, assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, probably 3 to 6, assuming a accurate ratio of 20 or 30 to 1, which will be occurring with this. Notice, again, there's our little system, right? It passes through the northeast, and there we go. We have another event. starting to develop across Indiana, Ohio, right, Illinois. Very light, but it does have quite a bit of energy from the south to work with. And this is again that Wednesday into Thursday event. Look at that, into say central Illinois, a bit of snow spreads into the D.C. area, into Philadelphia, southern Pennsylvania, Virginia, Maryland, and as we push this further to the north, this wave kind of just sits there. We see another reinforcing of some probably widespread light snow across Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, southern Wisconsin. And as this pushes through, these two kind of combine. And look, not a bad event actually, potentially across the Northeast come this late week. Again, plenty of cold air, so a lot of this could be falling at some pretty decent rates of snow. So, notice especially to the north. Obviously, where the rain snow line is set up, there will be, more of a 10-to-1 ratio. All right, so let's push this forward and just show you what this pattern holds. Beyond that, notice that we do start seeing more waves from the west, a bit more energy, quite a substantial amount of energy. So that doesn't really fare well. And if you don't want snow, and notice that we do start seeing more waves, right? You can see potentially combining with some sort of a system across the northeast again, only a few days after the first one pulls away. So again, it's just on a repeat pattern pretty much right now. Notice what we have at this time. Lots of precip across the northwest. This develops into a pretty large system according to the European, and more snow or rain depending on where you live. European 10-day forecast, or a bit actually more than 10 days. Notice that what it shows is through the 15-day forecast, I should say, decent amounts of snow, again assuming a 10-to-1, where the northeast may be a bit more accurate with this, right, as there will be some warm air, but across the Midwest 11 inches, assuming a 10-to-1. With the cold air we have now, that'll probably be closer to 20. Again, assuming what we get is going to happen, which the European might be a bit too excited about this. But just to show you that the Canadian also gets excited about all of these events. And you can see there's our tonight's event, which one we have going on, as you saw across the radar right now, right? So going back, we could see that. Come on, let's go back. We get that added on, right? And then we see that new event starting to form through. Eventually moves into the northeast, drops a bit of snow, right? And then we see that Thursday into Wednesday system, which again, over the very similar locations, the Canadian takes track over, and you can see right there, it adds on that snow, especially across the mid-Atlantic potentially. And then we have a Saturday weekend storm, which the Canadian dumps a bit more snow across the Midwest here into the Northeast, but really favors the upper plains. Look what it does. I mean, it just shows quite a good amount of snow. And if you're to turn on a Kuchera, which with this model we have the option to do so, finally you can see that across the Northeast, not bad amounts, but look what happens across the plains. Just glorious amounts of snow. And even across the Northeast, you can see Philadelphia, 10, 11 inches, right? A lot of locations seeing some snow. Southern United States, not really favored with this Canadian or really the European. But again, it's going to be hard to see snow down south at this time of the year, as it's very warm, but it's not impossible. And some models are still hinting at that. You can see that's the European model. Okay, let's take a look at now the GFS. So the GFS is generally a decent model. Has been kind of doing a poor job as of recently. So again, there's our first wave. You can see decent amounts of snow across the Northeast, especially where they get some more ocean involved. Total accumulated snowfall. Look at that. Assuming the Kuchera ratio, we get those amounts quite a bit higher, potentially up to 4 to 5 inches widespread, right? And then if you push the second system into Thursday, and then it goes to a bit of reinforcing potentially. Look at that, not bad. Again, the GFS is not as strong with this event as you saw with the European model, which drags a pretty large system across the Northeast. The GFS isn't really favoring that, but it definitely does show some snow. And again, these chances are going to be a bit hard to predict, as this could set up out of nowhere and just still drop snow. And notice a bit more favored towards upper plains kind of as well, but generally still a snowy pattern. And look at this, the GFS does bring some snow into Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, maybe northwestern Mississippi. But again, it's going, as we get towards March, it'll pretty much be not impossible, but very unlikely to see significant snow across the South. I mean, there have been storms that occurred that brought snow across the South, and that was, for example, the 1993 March superstorm. It was warm before the storm, it was warm after the storm, but all it took was that one freak accident, and we saw a ton of snow develop across the South and the East Coast. But no signs of that really right now, but just the active pattern to the north. Though it could, flirt with the, say, Tennessee, Arkansas area, and North Carolina for now. Okay, so I showed you a lot of those models. I want to show you a more high-res model, the RDPS, which I want to show you just, again, the layout of these many little systems that could be coming through. Again, here we have our nor'easter, right? Notice we have our little area of snow across Missouri, kind of parked there for a few days, and then it starts lifting off to the north into tomorrow and tomorrow evening. Look at that. We do start seeing that snow across Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. A bit of support from the ocean could mean quite a bit more snow across the Northeast, maybe even, under forecasted by some of the models. And then with a little break, we see another system developing into Thursday, that Wednesday, Thursday one, which is looking to be a bit more significant. And if I were to show you some of the ensembles, they do make a pretty big system out of that. According to the Kuchera, in the next 5 days, this is how much snow we can expect. Really, next 4 days, yeah, 5 days. You can see not bad amounts. Again, this will probably be a bit different in orientation as these are a bit hard to predict, but general area that has to watch out. DC area also could pick up some snow again. Pretty close to the rain snow line though. Alright, so regarding the model on ensembles, I talked about them, right? So I have the Mid-Atlantic pulled up. It's the biggest area that I have pulled up without going too far zoomed out, right? I will show you the West in just a bit for those folks out there. Notice that with the first system, this is what it shows, some of the ensembles. Some show very little. Well, some, again, assuming a 10-to-1, show almost, half a foot right there across southern, New York, right? And generally a lighter event for sure, but that's one of many. And that's what makes this interesting. Notice, this is the Wednesday into Thursday event. A lot of ensembles, according to the GFS ones, make this a pretty big system, and some even support a secondary nor'easter once that passes through. Look at this. Look at that one right there. Very significant. This one a bit less so, but still probably widespread over half a foot, getting close to a foot if you were to incorporate the correct ratios. And a lot of them do support heavy to moderate snow across the Northeast. So, again, several storm chances. And this is as far out as it goes with its latest model run. The 18Z one, but you can see it continues to add on more snow. Let's just quickly jump back to the previous model run that is a bit older, still relatively good information. You can see that the trend has been there. A lot of models showing a very significant system, and even those that don't, it's still decent amounts of snow. And again, there's many of these systems. So right after that, we do see more threats. You can see some bring it further to the north, some orient it further to the south. And just find your location, and let me just run through this hour timeline. Look at that, a completely large system right there in that model around this time frame. And if I were to show you 384 hours out, you would see that quite a bit of snow does get add on. Some a bit weaker across the Midwest, more towards the Northeast. Some a bit heavier towards the Midwest, weaker towards the Northeast, and some are just a combination of both, which actually a lot are. All right, so again, very heavy snow. Let me show you the western portion of the United States. I do want to focus on that. Let's see, West Coast. This will be zoomed out quite a bit, unfortunately, but nonetheless, it should do a pretty decent job of displaying that. Let's take it through the full time frame, very far out. Let me try zooming in, which I have to zoom out in order to increase it, which is kind of reverse of what you may think. Notice, right, we do see decent amounts of snow, obviously some variations, but a very active pattern as that kind of polar jet stream meets that Pacific jet stream, and they just bring in a lot of precip and cold air for that snow to fall. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to cover. I do want to quickly mention the temperatures. Obviously, they have been brutal, and I haven't been focusing much. In terms of anomalies, let's take a look at this. Notice what we have is a very significant cold air mass. This continues to occur in waves for the most part. You can see that the Northeast gets in on some of that. The Southern United States kind of stays out for now. Again, this week, I mean, just look at that. That is some bitter, bitter cold air. And in some portions, it intensifies. Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, very, very chilly cold air. Southern United States gets in on that probably around next weekend time frame, especially if you have a large system of some kind. Notice, look at that, just whoa! I mean, literally off the charts almost. Off the charts almost across some areas here. Thank goodness this is already mid-February. If this was say mid-January, that would be so much worse. I mean, it's still bitter cold. I mean, just brutal cold. But if this were that below average, and if it were January, that would be a negative 40 to 50 Fahrenheit. Now, again, this is just a model representation. This isn't necessarily going to happen. But all of them do show cold air. Again, not all to that magnitude. Notice at some points throughout mid-February, almost 100% of the United States is under below average conditions. excluding really the peninsula of Florida and portions of Georgia. And notice that it continues. While it does break up a bit more, these cold intrusions, these cold waves are definitely not on the lacking side. And they do weaken quite a bit, right? But again, I wouldn't say they're weak in any sense. Now, let's see, and I would say that just cold air is more favorable. Notice this is the Canadian model, another model that tends to kind of overdo some of these cold outbreaks, but look at that, very, very cold air. Again, you can see some warm air pulling in because the Canadian develops a very large system that dumps snow and brings rain pretty far to the north. So that would introduce a bit of some warmer air you could see, but I mean, right behind that, very, very cold air. And look at that, the west, it has all of California in extremely cold air, brutal cold air, which would, I mean, according to this Canadian, bring frost all the way into the largest cities of California, which this is kind of actually a scary scenario. Seattle, Portland, 8 Fahrenheit, even lower. So we'll have to see. I don't think this will happen. Canadian does these weird type of glitches, but it's not impossible with the temperature contrast we've been seeing. The European, I do want to show you its surface or its temperature. But in order for that, I want to go on pivotal weather as it will give us a better idea of what to expect. Okay, 2-meter temperature. And now you can see a large snowpack. That definitely does help out this cold air. Notice it gives us these anomalies in terms of Fahrenheit. Look at that, 40 Fahrenheit below average. Not below 0, but below average. So if the average is 10 Fahrenheit, it's going to be 30 below. Notice, again, some of these anomalies well into the Midwest, into the Northeast. Those staying mainly towards the Northwest and Great Lakes. Not so much the Northeast, but look at that. I mean, just waves of bitterly cold air. And you can see that the European does introduce quite a bit of cold air right here after potentially a storm system across the Northeast, the Plains, the Great Lakes, and into California. Again, nothing compared to what the Canadian was doing. But I mean, look at that. Montana, British Columbia, Alberta, just ridiculous anomalies across North Dakota and just the Northwest right here. Kind of a classic La Nina setup in terms of anomalies, but obviously most aren't to this extent. So yeah, we are in a very unprecedented pattern, very cold air, and to be honest, probably a historic outbreak of such a longevity. I mean, look at the North Dakota area, right? They don't go above 0 Fahrenheit for a while, and once they do, it's pretty miserable. It's 5-6 degrees Fahrenheit, and they could go right back under it. So just really an awful potentially pattern to be stuck in. But it's definitely looking pretty meek, pretty bleak, pretty meek. It's pretty gloomy, right? Let's take a look now at the ensembles. I know I'm extending this video quite a bit, but ensembles quickly. EPS, this is the European ensemble family. A lot of members combined. And unfortunately, this is tropical tidbits, so we can just look at the upper air temperature, which still shows a good representation of what may happen on the surface, but a bit less accurate. Still, you can see holds cold all the way well into mid-February, and that seems to be without a doubt. GEFS, regarding that, notice these go out further. Still, I mean, confident in terms of the cold air. Let's go back to the older model run that goes further out. It definitely does weaken, and that's probably because of lack of confidence and probably a bit of a warming pattern. Though, still below average for February. And maybe some warmth finally starting to get in. Really minimal. On a minimal side, 100%. Now, taking a look at the GFS, I think every midnight they go out very, very far out. And this one does not, but how about 2 days ago? Sometimes they put out these events that just go, these models that go very, very far out. Okay, this one's one of them. All right, so we have the very cold air right now, right, according to these models. Starts moderating towards mid to late February. Again, this is very far out. It's more of a speculation, not really accurate. But notice, introducing some cold air back into late February, and definitely more of a cold side than warm side to it. But no signs of insane bitter cold, obviously, as it's very far out at this point, March 4th. 5th, 6th, some warmth starting to get back through, but cold is definitely going to be persistent. All right, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all guys on the next episode. See ya.